You are not hearing a random message right now. You are hearing a door open over your life, and it opens with a kind of quiet that only matters when your spirit has been waiting for it. Something in you has already felt the change, even before your mind found words for it, and that is why this message reaches you with weight. The sky over your life is not confusing itself, it is aligning, and what looked delayed is being gathered with purpose. Stay with me, because by the end you will recognize the signs that have been circling you, the pattern that has kept you suspended, and the reason your hour has not arrived by accident, but by appointment. You have carried this in your body more than you have said it out loud, and it has shown up in the shoulders that never fully drop, in the chest that tightens when the room goes still, and in the strange tiredness that arrives even after a full night. You open your eyes, and something already feels unfinished, as if your day begins in the middle of a sentence that nobody else can hear. A message sits on your phone, and you do not answer it yet, not because you are careless, but because your inner life is louder than the screen. You have stood in ordinary places like the kitchen, the car, the bathroom mirror, and felt that you were present in the room, but not fully at ease inside yourself. There is a silence in you that is not empty, and that silence has been asking for meaning. It is not weakness that makes you notice this. It is sensitivity being refined under pressure. What others call nothing, you feel as a signal. What others dismiss as mood, you feel as timing. And because you have felt it in the body, the message does not enter as theory, it enters as recognition. You are not inventing this unrest. You are not making it larger than it is. You are only finally seeing that your interior life has been speaking long before your mouth was ready. That is why this message can meet you without forcing you. It simply names what your own breathing has already known. What is happening is not random, and it is not the kind of delay that means absence. It is a signal, and the signal is attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Not coming to shame you, but to prepare you. The moments that felt stalled are being used to separate noise from direction, pressure from purpose, fear from discernment, and exhaustion from the real word that is waiting beneath it. By the end, you will recognize why certain doors resisted, why some connections felt heavier than they should have, and why your peace did not return through effort alone. You will see that the sky over your life has been arranging what your hands could not force. You will understand that the waiting has not been empty, that the silence has not been wasted, and that the same God who lets timing mature also knows how to return what was covered too soon. Nothing here is pretending your life is easy. The message is only saying that it is being read more accurately than before. And when a life is read accurately, hope stops sounding vague and starts sounding like evidence. There is a daily scene that carries this for you, and it is often smaller than you expected. You are standing near a window, or by the sink, or at the edge of the bed, and you realize that the room has been speaking to you through what no longer fits. A habit that once kept you safe now feels too small. A conversation that once seemed normal now leaves a hollow taste behind it. A routine you repeated without question now asks for a different kind of honesty. This is how alignment often begins, not with fireworks, but with a quiet mismatch that refuses to stay hidden. Even the light on the wall can feel different when your spirit is changing, because you are no longer the same person who first entered that space. The body notices before the mind agrees. The breath slows, then catches. The jaw tightens, then softens. You are sensing that what once held your attention is no longer holding your future. That does not mean everything old was wrong. It means the season has changed, and your interior compass is refusing to lie for the sake of comfort. What is being revealed is not only around you, it is also in you. And that recognition does not push you into panic, it draws you toward precision. You are being taught to tell the difference between what is familiar and what is faithful. That difference becomes clearer when you stop rushing past the ordinary places where God has already been speaking. You have not felt this deeply by accident, and your sensitivity is not a flaw that needs to be erased. It is discernment, learning how to stand up inside a life that once asked you to shrink. You are the kind of person who notices when a word carries more than it says, when a room changes before anyone admits it, when a smile hides tension, when a promise sounds clean but feels unfinished. That does not make you superior. It makes you responsible with what you perceive. In the past, you may have learned to quiet that instinct because being accurate was inconvenient for other people. You may have been rewarded for staying agreeable, for softening your own perception, for calling confusion peace just to keep the atmosphere calm. But the chosen listener is often the one who cannot keep doing that forever. Something in you refuses to betray the truth just to protect old rhythms. You have paid enough attention to know that not every delay is failure. Some delays are protection. Some delays are the mercy of being kept from speaking too soon, trusting too quickly, or walking into what was not ready for you. Your sensitivity has become a place where God can reach you. That is why this message lands, because your spirit has already been leaning toward the answer before your mind knew what question to ask. And when discernment grows, it often feels like loneliness before it feels like clarity. Yet it is not loneliness. It is the beginning of precision. There is an opposition that does not always look like open attack. Sometimes it arrives as distraction, as pressure to answer too fast, as 1,000 small urgencies that keep you from hearing the one thing that matters. Sometimes it sounds like comparison, whispering that everyone else is moving while you are still waiting. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion arranged to make obedience look unreasonable. The day fills up, the mind gets crowded, and the spirit is left trying to speak through the noise. You know this pattern because you have lived in it. You have opened one tab after another in your life, trying to solve a deeper question with more motion, more effort, more explanation. But what is being delayed is not always the answer. Sometimes what is being delayed is your willingness to stop bargaining with the truth. When the wrong voice gets too loud, peace gets treated like a luxury instead of a signal. And that is when the inner life starts asking harder questions. Why does this keep repeating? Why does my body resist what my schedule accepts? Why does everything seem urgent except the one direction that keeps returning? Those questions are not a failure. They are the first sign that your spirit is no longer cooperating with confusion. The more faithful path begins when you notice that not every loud thing deserves your attention. The quiet thing often carries the real assignment. The scriptures have always known this kind of moment, when a person stands between what is visible and what is being prepared. Joseph did not begin in the palace. He began in the place where his own timing looked misunderstood, and yet what was covered was not cancelled. That story is not there to make your life dramatic. It is there to remind you that hiddenness can carry design. You may have felt like a sealed room, but sealed is not the same as forgotten. A sealed thing waits with intent. It is not abandoned to randomness. It is preserved for the hour when reading it will matter. That is why the biblical echo matters here. The same God who watched over Joseph through delay watches over your process without losing track of the details. The same wisdom that shaped his path is still able to shape yours without needing your panic. You have probably tried to explain the delay as if explanation could make it less heavy, but sometimes the better answer is not an explanation. It is a trust that the hidden season is still under supervision. You are not being punished by silence. You are being taught how to recognize the difference between being hidden and being lost. Those are not the same thing, and your life needs you to know it. If you keep pretending that nothing is happening, the cost is not immediate collapse, but slow dulling. Sensitivity can wear down when it is denied too long. Peace can become harder to feel when you keep agreeing with what your body already rejects. The inner noise grows when you refuse to name the signal, and then every small decision starts carrying the weight of the larger one you postponed. You know what that feels like. It is the kind of tiredness that does not respond to sleep alone, because it is tied to a divided life. A divided life always asks more from you than it gives back. That is why the warning here is sober, not threatening. The cost of ignoring the alignment is that you begin living as if your spirit is exaggerating when it is actually telling the truth. Then you start calling your own discernment instability, and your own caution fear, and your own peace indecision. None of that is the full story. The cost is not that you have failed. The cost is that you keep delaying the relief that comes from agreement. There is a moment when a person realizes that exhaustion is not proof that they are weak. It is proof that they have been carrying what was never meant to be carried in the same way forever. This is that kind of moment. The sky is aligning, and your interior life is asking to be included in the alignment instead of being dragged behind it. If even one of these signs has landed inside you, type 888 in the comments and come back to me. It is a quiet confirmation, not a performance, a simple way of saying that you recognize the overflow of what has been gathering around you. The number is not the point, the agreement is. Your handwriting it becomes a small act of consent, a way of saying that you have heard enough to stay present for what follows. This is how recognition becomes personal instead of theoretical. It moves from the room into your own record, where you can no longer pretend you did not notice. You do not need to force meaning into the sign. You only need to acknowledge that something has been aligning and that your spirit has been catching up to it. Type it, then come back to me, because what comes next deepens the pattern instead of repeating it. The next layer is not louder, only clearer, and clearer things ask for less defense and more attention. The deeper issue is not only what has happened around you, but what has been formed in you while it happened. Delay can expose an old habit of self-protection, and self-protection can become a cage when it outlives the season that created it. You may have learned to read people before trusting yourself, to explain before you were asked, to anticipate rejection before it arrived, or to keep your voice low enough that nobody could accuse you of being difficult. Those patterns may have saved you once. They may even have carried you through places that would have broken you otherwise. But survival habits are not always the same as assignment. When the hour changes, the habits that kept you safe can start keeping you small. That is why the pressure feels internal as much as external. You are not merely facing delays outside yourself, you are facing the old reflex to make peace by disappearing a little. The chosen life is not built on disappearance. It is built on a return to truth without the need for panic. Something in you is ready to stop negotiating with what has already been revealed. Something in you has become tired of living half alert, half hidden, half convinced that silence is safer than clarity. That is the threshold, And once you see the threshold, you cannot unsee it without feeling the cost. The root of the struggle is often not a lack of faith, but a fear of what obedience will cost. You may know the right direction and still hesitate because the old role feels familiar, and familiar can feel like safety even when it is shrinking your life. Control is seductive when you have been disappointed, because control promises certainty without vulnerability. But certainty built on control is thin. It breaks the moment the next unknown arrives. You have probably noticed how your mind tries to solve spiritual tension with practical overworking, as if enough planning could remove the need for trust. It cannot. Planning has its place, but it cannot replace surrender. The root here is not that you are unwilling to move. It is that moving honestly may require leaving behind the emotional furniture of the old season. That can feel expensive. It can feel like losing part of yourself. Yet the deeper truth is that you are not losing yourself. You are being returned to yourself. There is a version of you that was always more alive than the version shaped by fear. The alignment in the sky is not only about external timing. It is about the inner pattern becoming ready for what the outer pattern is already arranging. When that happens, the soul starts to breathe differently. The body still remembers the old reflex, but it no longer has to obey it. Your mind and your body do not always agree at the same speed, and that is not a sign that something is wrong with you. The mind can rationalize delay as prudence. The body can feel the weight of it as tension, and the spirit can know that it is time to move without needing to shout. That inner split is why you may sit in a chair, look perfectly calm, and still feel as if something is trying to break through your ribs. It is why you can answer everyone politely while privately sensing that a decision is already overdue. There are moments when your thoughts say, "Stay still," because stillness is what kept you safe before, while your deeper self says, "This is no longer the same room." Neither side is fake. They are simply speaking from different seasons. Discernment is not the absence of nervousness. Discernment is the ability to recognize when fear is using logic to stay in charge. That recognition matters. It keeps you from mistaking agitation for wisdom and keeps you from calling obedience reckless when it is actually timely. You do not need to force a dramatic act. You only need to stop pretending that the body's resistance is meaningless. The body often notices before the story changes, and when body, mind, and spirit begin to agree, alignment no longer feels like pressure, it feels like exhale. Some environments and some conversations resist your becoming, even when no one says it openly. You can feel it in the way a room drains you, in the way a familiar voice leaves you smaller, in the way certain people can only meet you as the version of you they already knew. That is not a reason for suspicion, and it is not an invitation to isolate yourself. It is simply discernment, asking you to tell the truth about what nourishes you and what consumes you. Not every connection is malicious. Some are just out of season. But out-of-season things still pull on you if you keep giving them the authority of yesterday. You have likely noticed that some places require you to perform strength, while others allow you to be honest enough to breathe. That difference matters. It tells you where your spirit can settle and where it has to armor itself. The sky, aligning over your life, does not erase the reality of human strain, but it does clarify which strains are worth carrying and which are only habits of access. You do not owe unlimited access to everything that once knew your name. That sentence may land with force because it is true. When you stop handing your attention to every draining thing, you begin to recover pieces of your own clarity. And clarity is not cold. Clarity is care, directed properly. The strategy against your peace is rarely one grand strike. It is 1,000 interruptions. It tires you by asking for urgency before understanding. It delays you by making every choice feel like the wrong one until you stop choosing. It confuses you by surrounding the essential with a flood of lesser concerns. It plants doubt at the exact place where you were just beginning to trust what you sensed. You have seen this pattern in ordinary life. You sit down to pray and suddenly remember 3 errands that seem impossible to ignore. You begin to make a quiet decision and then hear an old voice telling you to wait 1 more week, 1 more month, 1 more season. You reach for stillness and are met with a restlessness that feels almost persuasive. The strategy is not always dramatic, but it is persistent. That is why it matters to become less impressionable to noise. You do not need to fight every distraction as if it were an enemy with a name. You only need to notice that distraction is often the shape delay takes when it wants to look harmless. The moment you notice, you have already begun to win back your attention. And attention is the place where alignment becomes visible. There comes a point when the pattern loses its hold because you stop arguing with what you already know. You do not need to explain the evidence to everyone around you. You do not need to prove that you are tired of repeating the same circle. You do not need 1 more delay to convince you that the cycle is real. What you need is the courage to call the cycle what it is. That is the turn. Not a loud declaration, not a theatrical exit, just a quiet refusal to keep making peace with confusion. The moment you stop negotiating, your spirit begins to breathe differently. You notice the things you no longer want to carry. You notice the words you no longer want to repeat. You notice that some doors feel closed, not because you failed them, but because they were never meant to open in the same way. The alignment in the sky is already revealing that you are approaching a threshold. You do not have to sprint toward it. You only have to stop walking in circles around it. A circle gives you motion without arrival. A threshold asks for a decision, and decision is where the next layer begins. The image that carries this next layer is a sealed scroll waiting for the right hand. It was written with purpose, not haste. It was held back not because it lacked value, but because opening it too soon would have made the message unreadable. That is how your life has felt at times, as if there was something true in you that remained covered until the right hour. The seal was not punishment, it was preservation. Long before you understood the delay, the waiting was already protecting what mattered. You may have imagined that being covered meant being forgotten, but the sealed thing knows better. It knows that time can be part of care. It knows that readiness is not an insult to longing. It is the form longing must take when it matures. In your own story, this may have looked like quiet years, invisible labor, unanswered intention, or a sense that the message inside you could not yet be read by the people standing nearest to you. That concealment formed something strong. It kept the contents from being distorted by premature handling. And even now, the same thing is true. Not everything valuable is meant to be exposed at the speed of your anxiety. Some things must remain sealed until the hour when they can be received as they were intended. The seal was learned early, when speaking too soon brought misunderstanding and trusting too quickly brought disappointment. So you learned the shape of restraint. You learned how to close the hand before the room could take what it did not know how to honor. You learned how to carry something inwardly while appearing ordinary on the outside. That kind of formation is not glamorous, but it is real. It creates a person who can survive pressure without becoming crude, who can endure hiddenness without losing the thread of purpose. The scroll does not complain that it was rolled up. It simply waits with its ink intact. Your life has also been waiting with something intact. That is why the quiet has felt charged rather than empty. Something in you has been preserved through seasons that tried to flatten it. You may have thought the silence was doing nothing, but silence has a way of protecting the shape of a calling until the right moment arrives. And when that moment comes, the question is no longer whether the message exists. The question is whether you are ready to read it honestly. What tried to keep the scroll sealed was not only time, but also fear of misuse. Some parts of your story had to stay hidden because not every hand was prepared to handle them. You may have offered pieces of yourself too early, only to see them dismissed, misunderstood, or taken lightly. That experience teaches the soul to guard what is precious. Over time, that guarding can become so natural that you forget what it was protecting in the first place. You start living as if being unread is your permanent condition, but the sealed thing is not designed to remain sealed forever. It is designed to be opened by the one who can read it with care. This is why the metaphor matters so much. The delay was not a dead end. It was a threshold of preservation. The pressure you felt was not only resistance, it was containment. And containment can be holy when it keeps the contents from being scattered before the hour. There is a grief in that, of course, because you have had to wait with something valuable while others looked past you. Yet grief is not the same as defeat. The waiting has been teaching you how to remain intact. That integrity will matter when the seal opens. It matters now. Then something shifts. The hand that was not ready begins to recognize the writing. The sealed scroll is not ignored anymore. It is approached with reverence. You can feel the difference in your own life when what was once delayed begins to breathe. The pressure eases, not because everything is solved, but because the right timing has touched the thing you were carrying. A corner of the covering loosens. Light reaches what was hidden. The tension that once made you think the door was against you now feels more like a pause before release. This is not fantasy. It is the quiet realism of a soul moving from concealment into recognition. You may not have all the words yet, but you know the feeling of something no longer resisting the hand. The image begins to move because you begin to move differently. You are no longer begging the wrong hour to become right. You are standing in the hour that has finally arrived. That is why your breath changes when the truth gets near. The sealed thing is not being rushed, it is being readied. And readiness has a sound, even before it has a visible outcome. If that image has landed in you, type "Estoy despierto" in the comments and come back to me. Say it in the present tense, as recognition, not as performance. Let the words mark the moment where the seal begins to loosen in your own record. There is something powerful about naming awareness before you can fully explain it. It tells the inward life that you are no longer asleep to what is shifting. The phrase is small, but it is a true agreement. It means you have felt the movement of the scroll, the change in the light, the easing of the hand. Type it, then return to me. Because what follows is not a new metaphor, only the same one walking into its fulfillment. The image does not change, it deepens, and deepening is often how God answers what you thought was only waiting. The return now is not to performance, but to the place where your spirit stopped pretending. You do not need to become louder in order to become faithful. You do not need to prove readiness through strain. You only need to return to what was true before fear made everything harder to read. That return begins in small actions that look almost ordinary. In the morning, before the noise collects, you sit for a quiet seal, and you let your day begin with consent instead of reaction. Later, when the mind starts racing, you practice a peace audit, noticing which voices expand your clarity and which ones shrink it. These are not magic tricks. They are acts of stewardship. They teach the body that peace is not accidental and the spirit that it does not have to chase what was already being returned. The sealed scroll in your life does not need pressure to open. It needs reverence, timing, and a refusal to force what is meant to unfold. When you live this way, even ordinary movements become part of the alignment. A phone left untouched for a moment can become a border of wisdom. A pause before answering can become protection. A quiet room can become a place of order again. And order is not control. Order is readiness with peace inside it. With peace. One practice is to begin the day by naming what you will not hand over to noise. Before the messages, before the demands, before the first outside voice, you sit and say in your own heart that your attention belongs to what is true. That threshold pause changes the texture of the day. It teaches your nerves that they do not have to open every door immediately. It also reveals the difference between urgency and assignment. Some things call loudly because they want your fear. Other things arrive quietly because they want your faithfulness. When you make space for that distinction, you stop being ruled by interruption. The room does not have to be perfect for the practice to matter. The bed can be unmade, the coffee can be cooling, the hour can... Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.